Thank you, John. Well, what a pleasure it has been over the last few days to be here with all of you, to get to know you, to hear all of your stories and the work that you're doing around identifying and living your higher purpose. And that's why I'm really excited to share with you today some of the work that I've been doing, the big idea about how we measure purpose for our organizations. And I think that this is really timely for so many reasons, but right now there's a shift, I think, that's happening out in the world. I don't know if you feel it. There's a shift that people aren't just buying things, they're buying into things, right? People are paying as much attention to what they're purchasing as who they're purchasing it from, and that company behind the product matters, and what that company stands for matters. You know, of course, this is not news to any of you here. That's why you're here, right? You've been running companies and investing in these for many, many years. And if our slide would shift, you would see many of these companies, including your own, that have been running them through the lens of purpose for a long time, right? Companies that are here today, like Whole Foods and Southwest and Starbucks, and many of yours as well. So the question isn't, do we care about purpose? Does it matter? We know that that is true, right? The question that I want to ask all of you today to think about is, does purpose pay? Because we also see right now that it can be particularly painful to be a purpose-driven organization. Look what has just happened in the world over the last 6 months. We see all sorts of companies that are getting a lot of flack and bad press in the world for the issues that they're standing up for, right? On the one side, you might have your employees or your customers that are bad-mouthing you in the public or in social media for the actions they're taking. On the other side, I mean, you have your board, maybe your shareholders saying, come on, that purpose thing was kind of fun, right? But like, what's going on? Let's get back to the business of running our business. What are you supposed to take away from that? CMOs still love purpose, but CFOs are saying, come on, where's the proof? Where's the proof, right? I want to see something for the investment, the value. Is there value here for what we're doing? Now, these CFOs are not wrong to ask this question, because most studies, if you look at them, actually fail to show a tangible return for being a purpose-driven company. How do I know? I've read a lot of them, and there are a lot of them. This is just a few right here. Look at this first one. My friends from Bain wrote a beautiful book called Winning on Purpose. Maybe some of you have even read it, yeah? A few, yes? If you have, you know that really what they're talking about is customer love and increasing your NPS score, which is a wonderful thing. But what happens when you end up with a company that has customers that love you, but maybe at the same time have employees or your suppliers who are kind of hating your guts? Is that purpose? It happens. Just ask their friends from Amazon. And some of these other studies are looking at and studying things like social impact or brand resonance, kind of all over. So what's going on? Why are these all so different? Well, it's really hard to find proof that purpose pays without an objective metric for what makes a purpose-driven company. Some of these metrics that are most often conflated with being purpose-driven are things like customer love, as I just talked about, ESG initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, B Corp certification, purpose-driven brands. You've all heard and probably spending a lot of time thinking about some of these things. The one that gets me the most is even when purpose gets conflated with just feeling like you have social and progressive ideals. So if these aren't the right metrics, you should be asking me, if you're not, what is the right metric then for being able to measure what is a purpose-driven organization? Now, my colleagues and I at Jump Associates for over 20 years have been spending a lot of time with purpose-driven companies, researching purpose-driven companies. And what we've seen is the most purpose-driven of them are differentiated in 5 different ways. Now, for those of you paying attention, you will notice that 4 of these match our conscious capitalism tenets. But there is one new one that I think is really important for us to consider when measuring purpose. So let's take a look at these. From the top, activated purpose. We know that a company should have a clear and expansive reason to exist beyond making money. What is your big why? There are many whys in the world, but to have clarity around what your big why is. Aligned culture is the next one, a consistent set of beliefs and behaviors that people inside and outside of the organization can count on. Stakeholder centricity, this idea of creating value for all of our stakeholders, not just our investors. Next level leadership. Does your company have an approach for identifying and developing leaders for this VUCA world that we live in? And last but not least, future focus, a time horizon for planning and execution that extends beyond this quarter, beyond this year. We're really talking about 5, 7 years into the future. Now, with these 5 different factors, what can you do with them? You can start to look at your organization, any organization, and start to assess, how am I doing against these factors? What kind of activities do we have in my organization to express these factors? And with this, you can actually start to put some measurements around it, put a diagnostic together, put some actual numbers around how you're doing, which is what we've actually done. We have put together at Jump purpose-driven scorecard with an organization can get a score from 0 to 100, how purpose-driven you are based on the 5 factors below. Now, this is an example of a purpose-driven scorecard we put together with our friends from Standard Meat. Ashley and Ben are actually here, the co-presidents, today with us. And they today have a score of 72. They're doing pretty well, pretty purpose-driven, right? Now, what does a scorecard like this help them do? What is the value of this? Yes, they have this number that today and over time they can go back and actually assess and track this and be able to share this with their leadership team and their organization so that everyone is very clear where we stand today. You can also see that then Ashley and Ben can benchmark themselves against other purpose-driven organizations. In this case, like Whole Foods or Starbucks or Chipotle. You can also then kind of see a breakdown of how they're doing against each of these different factors and where there's room to look at the things that you're doing well, like aligned culture, where you have a score of 15, and maybe some areas where there's some room for improvement, like next level leadership. Now, this isn't a surprise to Ben and Ashley. We put this together with you, sitting down, having a dialogue with them and their leadership team, where they're assessing themselves. And at the end of that, we put some actions together, some actions that they could take to move the needle, to continue to improve. Dare I say, to become even more purpose-driven. With a scorecard like this, now we can start to evaluate any company and how purpose-driven they are by looking at some activities, which is exactly what we've done. Here you see 15 publicly traded purpose-driven companies. We have given these purpose-driven companies scores, as you can see. Just like in school, 65, consider 65 kind of a passing grade, that you are purpose-driven. You see off to the side there, our friends, Patagonia, which Patagonia is the company so far that has the highest score on our scorecard with a score of 95. They're kind of off to the side there because they are not a publicly traded company. That said, we wanted to look at publicly traded companies because, again, let's get back to the question at hand today. Does purpose pay? I want to look at their returns. So now, with a quantitative metric to know that these 15 companies are purpose-driven, we set out to do just that. And we compared them against some other companies. There is a set of comparable firms because against 10 different sectors that we wanted to look at here. It's really important that we separated them by sector because we just didn't think it'd be fair to compare a grocery store to a tech company, right? But when we did that and looked at some leading comparables, what we did see that we looked at over time. So we wanted to look at a nice chunky period of time, 20-year period. The period of time we were looking at was 2000 to 2019. And over that period of time, we did indeed see that purpose-driven companies outperform their competitors. Yay, yes. Now, this is not really a huge surprise. I mean, we hoped that this would happen, right? This was our hypothesis in doing the study. But friends, man, when we saw these numbers come back, we are kind of blown away by the outcome. If you look there at the bottom, our purpose-driven companies had a compound annual growth rate of 13.6%. That compares to 8% for our leading comparables. It's a 5.6% difference. That's a big number. What is the impact of that? Well, take a look at this. If you were to invest $10,000 in 2000 in each of those purpose-driven companies, so imagine $150,000 total investment, over that 20-year period, that $150,000 would yield you almost $2 million. That's compared to that same $150,000 investment invested in the S&P 500 would yield you about $475,000. $475,000 compared to $2 million. It's a big difference. How much of a difference? 5x total return difference. And even 3 times better return than our well-regarded leading comparables. So what does this tell us? It does pay over the long term to be a purpose-driven company. You all know this. You've known it probably for a long time in your hearts, but now we actually have some data to back it up. You can do good and do well in this world. If some of you are interested in learning more about our purpose-driven company scorecard, or even have the opportunity to score yourselves in your companies, just like Ashley and Ben, come to my workshop this afternoon. We're gonna do exactly that, and you'll have the opportunity to actually rate yourself and get a report at the end and see how you're doing, and get some actions you can take to move forward. For now, thank you very much.
Nice.